Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the transfer portal, a million things to update you on there, and I'm sure there'll be a million more on Wednesday. So we'll wrap back around that when we need to, but let's get into a little bit of a weekend headline roundup because there's a lot of different things that happened this past weekend. We'll talk about that Marshall opt-out here in a second, but I wanted to start over there in Chapel Hill. I wanted to start with Bill Belichick, give you a little bit of an update of what has been happening over there, and it's been pretty nice. It's been a very, very nice start to the Bill Belichick era, as you would assume, but the biggest domino that has fallen thus far is Bryce Baker, the very, very talented quarterback commit. He is officially signed this past weekend. A huge, huge thing for UNC fans that were a little bit nervous that he might be shopping his options just a little bit, might be looking a little bit elsewhere. You get this guy in the door and he immediately signed for that program. Huge. This cannot be overstated. He could be the starter for the entirety of the time that Bill Belichick is there at UNC. He has the ability to beat out Jacoby Criswell, to beat out Max Johnson for that starting job in 2025, and he might just be the thing that defines that Bill Belichick era more than just about anything else. So cannot be overstated, cannot love this kid more. Bryce Baker is an absolute monster, and I definitely think he's going to be a huge piece for this UNC team moving forward. Definitely huge to get him officially in the books and definitely on your team for 2025. But a lot of the different updates, a couple of guys have officially decided to come out of the transfer portal, including starting center Austin Blosh, including starting guard Aiden Banfield, but the biggest one of the bunch is Amari Campbell, the starting linebacker. He had 72 total tackles, 6.5 sacks this year. He's a remarkable player and definitely in a Bill Belichick defense could absolutely thrive, could become a Sunday player very, very quickly. He might already be a Sunday player as far as I'm concerned, but definitely with one more year, him, Camion Rucker, a lot of the guys on that defense, it feels like they're definitely responding, at least in the short term, to what Bill Belichick is selling right about now. Obviously, there's still a lot of things to be figured out. The transfer portal has been a little bit quiet. You've seen a couple of visits kind of pop up to UNC, and definitely they'll start to heat that up over the next week or so. This coaching staff news is still slowly rolling in. It sounds like behind the scenes there are some big-time names that could be joining him over there in Chapel Hill, so we'll keep you updated with all of that type of stuff, but it sounds like there was a lot of different things that led up to this, but one of the interesting things that did come out this past week, and I believe it came out yesterday actually, was there were reports that he was very interested in that Jets opening in the NFL, called to see what the interest was there, and then UNC really accelerated things. So if that internal struggle that we talked about at UNC that was definitely going on throughout this process, if that carried on for another 24 hours, Bill Belichick might be up there in New York City, and then they're still trying to find a head coach, or maybe John Summerall has taken over at UNC. So a very, very different world, but we're probably about 12, 24 hours from that possibly happening. So a little bit of wrinkle into this thing, but UNC fans, you got your coach. You don't have to worry about that for the time being. But some other coaching updates to keep an eye out on. Rashad Samples is officially out of the Sam Houston State head coaching search. This kid is a star. This guy is a star. He is older than me. I don't want to be disrespectful, but he's a remarkable player or coach. He's definitely a rising star in the college football world. He is going to be a head coach before too long, but has decided to stay at Oregon for another year. I feel like that's probably the right decision for him if I had to imagine. I think there would be some bigger jobs calling this time next year if I had to imagine for him. That leaves only Sam Houston, Ohio, and Central Michigan as the open jobs right about now on the head coaching market. Once those are filled, that could be it for the entire cycle, which would be pretty incredible. Would be a crazy thing to watch. And then if Ohio State falls, then it could just be the beginning. So obviously we'll keep you updated there, but definitely a lot of things that could happen, a lot of things that might just be wrapping up here pretty soon. Over to West Virginia, Rich Rodriguez officially the head coach, and almost immediately he was calling Josiah Trotter to see if he would come back from the portal, come back to Morgantown and be their starting linebacker, and it sounds like that door is still very much open. He's taken visits to Washington and Missouri already, so still a lot of questions around that. Definitely will be something to watch, but it sounds like he is at least somewhat open to possibly coming back. The question is, who's going to be his DC? And there's a couple of guys to watch there. It sounds like Zach Alley is a guy to watch, the former Jacksonville State defensive coordinator under Rich Rodriguez and the current Oklahoma co-defensive coordinator. This dude's a star. This is the guy that I would go all out on and trying to get. He is absolutely incredible. Not sure if he would leave the position he has right now to take the DC job there, but absolutely incredible coach. Definitely going to be a head coach in his future, and if West Virginia can get him, they should go out and get him. I'll just leave it at that for the time being. And then Jeremiah Johnson, another guy to watch, the Louisiana Tech defensive coordinator, has done an incredible job there. Did an incredible job against NC State earlier this year, against Arkansas earlier this year. Very, very talented guy. So can't really go wrong with either of these guys. I lean a little bit more towards Zach Alley, but at the end of the day, both really, really talented guys, and whichever one they get, I think is going to be able to build a very good defense up there in Morgantown. Then we got to talk about Marshall. This was kind of the big story of the weekend. Marshall has officially opted out of the Independence Bowl against Army because they just don't have enough guys. They don't feel confident that they can send guys out there in a healthy and competitive way when they go out there on the field, and I tend to agree with them. When you look at that roster right about now and all the guys that have transferred out since Charles Huff has left for Southern Miss, it makes sense. It's an absolute nightmare what's going on with that roster right about now, and yet another inkling of why this schedule and why this way we're going about business right now in the month of December in college football is all types are wrong. You have an entire team that is deciding that they can't play another game, and you have some seniors on that team that don't get to play football for the rest of their lives. They don't get to play competitive football ever again, and they did not know that going into this week. They officially know that now. That is absolutely devastating to all of those guys. It's not on Charles Huff. It's a lot on the administration over there at Marshall for handling that situation very poorly. It's even more on the schedule of college football right now, the calendar that we have right now. You just have to move the portal opening to spring. Obviously, there's a little bit different of a circumstance because he did leave. The portal would open for them because your head coach had left, but I promise you, there would not be nearly as many guys walking out the door if they didn't feel like they had to walk out the door to get what they need, to get a starting spot, to get a certain amount of money from the NIL collective, to get these things that a lot of these other guys are getting around the market. Same reason why Bo Pribla is making the decision that he's making is he has an offer on the table. He has something on the table from some school that is willing to give him X amount of money. They wouldn't be willing to give that to him if he were to play in the CFP. That is the issue with the schedule right now. We're making these kids make decisions that they probably don't all that much want to make, but it's just the schedule that's making them, that's forcing them to make them. So obviously, Charles Huff leaving had a big time effect on this. A lot of players are going to follow him to Southern Miss, including probably Braylon Braxton, if I had to imagine, the talented quarterback. So a lot of different things that went into this. Obviously, it's not all on the NCAA. It's not all on Marshall. It's not all on Charles Huff or these players. It's just one of those things. That's kind of the reality of college football right now. The month of December is an absolute nightmare, and it's forcing things like this to happen. Forcing things like seniors that really wanted to play that last game against Army, get one more chance to put on that jersey. They never get to do that again, and that's an absolute nightmare. It's something that none of those kids should have to deal with. But overall, it opened a door for Louisiana Tech to get a little bit of a berth into that postseason. They will be facing off against Army in Shreveport, and you better be lucky that Louisiana Tech is in Shreveport, because that's probably the only way that this was able to happen. Really great that this is still going to be able to be played even without Marshall, but you just hate it. It's the reality of December in the sport. We'll break it down in a little bit more detail tomorrow, but it's one of those things that I don't really blame Marshall. I don't really blame those kids. I blame just about everything around this situation that has forced this kind of world to be possible in the college football world right now. And then Donovan Edwards, he has officially opted out of the bowl game against Alabama, the ReliaQuest Bowl, and he is likely heading on his way to the NFL draft. No official statement has been made there, but you would have to imagine that's where he's heading. A tough blow for Michigan, no doubt about that, but they do have Khalil Mullings. He will likely be playing in this game, so shouldn't be necessarily a problem, but his Michigan career comes to an end as the second all-time receiving yards for a Michigan running back, only 13 behind Anthony Thomas. He had almost 800 receiving yards on his career. Really remarkable player, but he will be remembered for that performance against Washington, the 2 touchdowns. Really remarkable player, and then got to lift that trophy, but maybe more than anything else, he was 4-0 against Ohio State. That's the most important thing over there at Michigan, and he was able to do that, but it feels like we haven't seen as many opt-outs this year. That's something that I kind of noticed when I was reading this, is we've seen a couple of guys jump into the portal and leave their teams and things like that, but no straight-up opt-outs. No guys that just say, I'm not going to play, I'm going to move on to the NFL. Obviously, we will have some. I don't doubt that by any means, but it does feel like it's tempered down from last year, which is a very, very cool thing to see. And then finally, we got to talk about the trophy, guys. We got to talk about this Pop-Tart trophy because it is a toaster. The entire trophy is a toaster, and it's the coolest thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. I'll be totally honest, I've not had that cool of a life, but this is awesome. This is the coolest thing in the world. This is something that should be the national championship trophy. This is something that I would be telling my grandkids about because this is so cool. I am in love with this trophy. Whoever gets to lift that thing up, congratulations. You just got the coolest honor of maybe the entire college football season, including the Heisman, including the national title. This one's special. Cannot wait to see that thing be unveiled. As long as they don't toast one of the mascots again, I think we're in good shape. They have a toaster now. Just use normal Pop-Tarts. We don't need to see the mascot go down there and get toasted. Just plain and simple. But remarkable trophy. Absolutely love that. Had to include that in the show today because it just made me really happy. But at the end of the day, that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all the social pages for all the content and updates you could possibly need. We have great people covering every single sport you could want. So anything you need in the world of sports, come on over to GSMC and we have you totally covered. But thank you once again for listening. We will be back tomorrow to talk about the nightmare that is December, to update you on some of the first round questions. A lot of stuff coming tomorrow, though. We'll see you then at 9 a.m. Eastern, and I'll see you then.